Her car was parked outside the house. The familiar red hatchback I'd helped her pick out 2 years ago was stuffed to the brim with boxes, clothes, and pieces of her life that, until now, I thought we'd shared. My stomach churned as I sat in my car across the street, watching her laugh with him as they carried a mattress up the driveway. When Sarah asked for space 2 weeks ago, I didn't push back. I didn't argue. I thought maybe we'd hit a rough patch, that some time apart would help us figure things out. She promised it wasn't about anyone else, that it was just her needing to find herself. But now, as I watched her settle into his house like it was hers, I realized how stupid I'd been. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was a text from Sarah. "Just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing okay." I stared at the message, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. Was she serious? She had the audacity to text me while moving in with someone else? The front door closed, and she stepped back outside with him. They were smiling, her hand brushing against his arm as they stood on the porch. He leaned in, saying something that made her laugh, and my chest tightened. This wasn't just a rebound or a fling. This was her new life, and I wasn't in it. I sat there for a long time, the weight of betrayal settling over me like a suffocating blanket. Eventually, I started the car and drove away. The image of them together burned into my mind. I didn't know how to confront her yet, but one thing was clear. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not without answers. I didn't respond to Sarah's text. Instead, I spent the next day combing through every detail of the past few months, searching for the signs I had ignored. Her late nights at work. The sudden, inexplicable distance between us. The way she'd stopped asking about my day, as if my life outside of her didn't matter anymore. It all seemed so obvious now. By the third day, I couldn't hold back any longer. I drove to her new address, my mind spinning with a mix of anger and humiliation. When I pulled up, her car was in the driveway again, parked next to his. I sat there for a moment, the heat of my fury fighting against the cold knot of anxiety in my stomach. I got out and walked up to the front door, every step feeling heavier than the last. I didn't hesitate. I knocked hard 3 times. The door opened, and there she was. For a moment, she looked like the Sarah I'd always known, soft, familiar, someone I thought I could trust. But then her face changed. Shock, guilt, and a flicker of annoyance passed over her features like a storm cloud. "Ryan," she said, her voice uneasy. "What are you doing here?" I crossed my arms, my jaw tight. "What am I doing here? I should be asking you the same thing. 2 weeks ago, you needed space. Now you're living with him." Her face flushed, and she glanced over her shoulder. "Can we not do this here?" she said quietly, stepping onto the porch and closing the door behind her. "Why not?" I snapped. "Afraid he'll hear? Afraid he'll find out you've been lying to both of us?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The guilt in her eyes only made my chest tighten. "Ryan," she said finally, her tone soft but defensive. "This isn't what you think." "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't insult me by pretending this isn't exactly what it looks like. You're living with him, Sarah. You lied to me. You cheated. And now you're standing here like I'm the one overreacting." Her expression crumpled, and she crossed her arms, her shoulders hunching as if to protect herself. "It's not that simple," she said. "I didn't plan for this to happen." "Stop saying that," I snapped. "You don't accidentally pack your things and move in with another man. You made a choice. Own it." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "But I couldn't keep living a lie." "A lie?" I repeated bitterly. The only lie here was the one you told me when you said you needed space. You didn't want space, Sarah. You wanted him." She flinched, her tears spilling over. I was confused. She whispered, "I didn't know what I wanted." "No," I said coldly. "You knew exactly what you wanted. And it wasn't me." The door opened behind her, and he stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of guy who oozed effortless confidence. He looked between us, his brow furrowing as he took in the tension. "Everything okay out here?" he asked, his tone calm but pointed. "This doesn't concern you," I said, my voice sharp. "Actually, it does," he said, stepping closer. "If you're here to harass Sarah, I think it's time for you to leave." I turned to Sarah, ignoring him. "Is this how it ends?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "You replace me and expect me to just walk away like none of it mattered?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face as he put a protective hand on her shoulder. The sight of it broke something inside me. I took a step back, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "You made your choice, Sarah," I said, my voice hollow. "I hope it was worth it." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away, her sobs echoing in my ears as I left her, and everything we'd built, behind. The drive home felt like a blur, my thoughts spinning as the image of Sarah and him together played on repeat in my mind. I tried to push it aside, but no matter how hard I gripped the wheel or how loud I turned up the radio, the weight of her betrayal refused to loosen its grip. When I got back to my apartment, the silence was suffocating. Her things were still scattered around, her favorite mug on the counter, the throw blanket she always insisted made the couch cozy. I wanted to throw it all out, to erase every trace of her from my life, but instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty spot where she used to sleep. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another text from Sarah. "I'm sorry for how you found out. Please, can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. But before I could act, the phone rang. It was Theo. "Tell me you didn't let her get away with it," he said the moment I answered. I let out a bitter laugh. "What was I supposed to do? Drag her back here? She's already moved in with him, Theo. It's over. You deserve better than this," he said firmly. "She doesn't get to screw you over and then act like she's the victim." "She said she didn't want to hurt me," I muttered, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Bullshit," Theo snapped. "If she didn't want to hurt you, she wouldn't have lied. She wouldn't have cheated. Don't let her gaslight you into thinking any of this is your fault." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah," I said quietly. "You're right." For the first time since I confronted her, I felt a flicker of clarity. Sarah had made her choice, and it was time for me to make mine. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. She wasn't going to define how this ended. The next day, I boxed up all of her things. Every photo, every trinket, every piece of her that had been woven into my life. I didn't text her or call her. I just packed it all up and drove to her new address. When I got there, I didn't bother knocking. I set the boxes on the porch and walked away. But as I turned back to leave, the door opened. "Ryan," she said, her voice soft, tentative. I stopped, turning to face her. She looked tired, her eyes puffy from crying, her posture hesitant. "You didn't have to do this," she said, gesturing to the boxes. "I did," I said simply. "I don't want anything of yours in my life anymore." Her lips quivered, and she stepped closer. "I didn't mean for it to end like this," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to lose you." "Didn't mean to?" I repeated, my anger simmering beneath the surface. "Sarah, you planned this. You lied to me, you cheated on me, And you moved in with him while pretending you just needed space. This isn't an accident. It's exactly what you wanted. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. I thought I wanted something else, but I was wrong. I miss you, Ryan. I miss us. Her words hung in the air, but they didn't have the effect she probably hoped for. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a hollow indifference. You miss the idea of me, I said finally, but you don't miss me. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. I'll leave him, she said quickly, desperation creeping into her voice. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just tell me what you need. I shook my head, my chest tightening with a mix of finality and relief. It's too late, Sarah, I said. You already made your choice. Now you have to live with it. Her sobs grew louder, but I turned and walked away. This time, I didn't look back. Weeks passed, and the chaos Sarah had left in her wake began to fade. The apartment felt emptier without her, but it also felt lighter. The weight of her lies and betrayal was gone, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. One evening, while scrolling aimlessly through social media, I stumbled across a photo. It was Sarah, tagged in a post by a mutual acquaintance. She was sitting alone at a cafe, her expression distant, a far cry from the confident, carefree woman I once knew. The caption read, "Life's lessons hit hard sometimes, but they make us stronger." I stared at the photo for a moment, a strange mix of pity and closure settling over me. She had chosen this path, believing the grass was greener on the other side. But now, it seemed, she was learning the hard way that it wasn't. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Theo. "How's the single life treating you? Let's grab a beer soon." I smiled and typed back, "Better than I expected. Let's make it happen." A few days later, while walking home from work, I ran into her. It was bound to happen eventually. Our town wasn't that big, but I hadn't prepared for the moment. She was standing outside a bookstore, her arms full of paper bags, her face pale when she saw me. "Ryan," she said, her voice uncertain. "Hi." "Hi," I said, keeping my tone neutral. For a moment, we just stood there, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Finally, she spoke. "I've been meaning to reach out," she said, "but I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me." "I wouldn't," I said simply. She flinched, but she nodded. "I deserve that," she said quietly. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how I hurt you." Her voice trembled, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the Sarah I'd once loved. But that Sarah was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, my voice steady. "But I've moved on, Sarah. You should, too." Her eyes filled with tears, but she managed a weak smile. "Take care of yourself, Ryan," she said softly. "You too," I replied. As I walked away, the tension in my chest eased. The encounter hadn't been planned, but it gave me the closure I didn't realize I needed. Sarah had made her choice, and now, so had I. That night, sitting on my balcony with a drink in hand, I let myself reflect on everything. Sarah's betrayal had shaken me to my core, but it hadn't broken me. If anything, it had reminded me of my own worth, of the strength I'd forgotten I had. I watched the city lights flicker in the distance, a sense of calm washing over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be, free, unburdened, and ready to start again.